Hello, 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 and welcome to another SCOUTCAST brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and in a week of high scores, suspensions, some people got hundreds of points, other people didn't. We are also joined by the two lovely people here that didn't get 100 points this week. That's right, I'm going to say 100 points one more time. Hibbo, how's it going, my man?
Not too bad. It's been a good Christmas. It's been like time for kind of rest and relaxation, and it's been a nice break from like work and stuff like that. But no, FPL I think's going well over the period. There's been a couple of green arrows, and I think now we're going to look future. We've finished half of the season now, but look forward now to the rest of the season to see if we can hit these kind of target ranks between now and May. So, and credit to you for your 100 points. I think you had a smashing week.
Oh, thank you so much. Do you know what? I wasn't going to mention it actually, so thank you so much for bringing that up. But yeah, we should also say as well, Happy New Year to everybody there as well. I hope you really enjoyed your festive celebrations that you had last night. Nacho, Happy New Year to you as well, my man. Exactly the same points as Hibbo this week. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Happy New Year to both, and obviously everyone watching and listening in. And yeah, it was a good game week to be honest. And I think it's the first time in a while that we've all had like relatively good game weeks. Obviously, mate, you've had better than others. But we'll talk about that later. I know you're itching to talk about it any opportunity. So, but we're going to give you your flowers this week. We're definitely going to actually give you your flowers because you deserve it, mate. But it's a good week for all of it. I'm looking at them right now. The ranks looking good. The points looking good. So if we can take this into 2025, then only good things to come from here.
That's exactly it. And when you look at 2025, I have been the best manager so far this year out of the three of us. So you can't argue with that. And it just goes to show how bad my year has been that I am clinging on to this with everything I possibly can. So let's have a look at what we're going to be talking about tonight. We've got some points we're going to be looking at. Yes, we are going to be talking about my points for a good 20, 25 minutes. Then we're going to be looking at the XA and XGI over the last 6 game weeks of the players that we've seen so far this season. We'll be looking at the fixtures. We've got the captaincy matrix. We've got our bus teams. We don't have a com team update. I think that's because it was a very, very quick turnaround. And then we got a bit of a Q&A at the end as well. We've got a few people in the chat. We've got Stephen Harker saying Happy New Year. Martin Langfield. We've got D. Jenkins saying great to watch this live for once. Thank you for joining us, my man. Joseph Robinson as well. Who else? We got Jankster Jr. and Vicky Maddox all in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us. I think we've got over 100 in there already. So that was great. Hopefully they got some lovely Jesus or Martinelli points in the chat. So let's have a look at some points. And oh, look at that. It's my points up first. I ended up with 100 points this week. My first 100 of the season, which I'm very, very happy with. My transfer this week was I got rid of Flecken and I brought in Allison. So I got 6 points from him. Gabriel got 2. Trent got me 15. He's been threatening it for a while and he finally did it, 15 points. Lewis got me 6, finally got me some kind of return. Mo Salah with 32 points, just auto captain at the moment, especially with his very weak opponents next week. Palmer got me 2. Semenyo with 5, which is a bit of a dodgy assist, but he did get it. Odegaard got 2. Rogers got 11, but also picked up that 5th booking, so he's suspended for next week. Isak got me 7, and Chris Wood, who is just... basically Jesus to me now, got me 12 points. I did, though, even though I got 100 points, I had Raul on the bench with 9 points, and I had Lewis Hall on the bench with 12 points as well. So I did have some quite substantial bench points there. When there were a few rumours going on about Arsenal having a bit of a flu going around the camp, I thought, oh, could it happen? But I'm very, very happy that I've got a squad that are all playing and all seem to be returning. And I feel like that's really good with Rodgers being suspended. I feel like I don't really need to make a move this week. So I feel like that's good. But 100 points from 1.5 million to 1 million. So hopefully this is where my rise up again starts to happen. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, very, very happy. 100 points. I'm going to say it one more time. 100 points. Right, Hibbo. I've got to milk it because it's been such a tough year. Hibbo. It should be. Hibbo, talk us through your points this week, my man. You made a move that I kind of recognised. Yes. Shut up. Stop it. I can bring up... Right, no, next week I'm going to bring up the timestamps of where we make our moves and people will see the truth. Oh my God. Disgusting. Can't even have a good week. He's taken that away from me.
Are you muted?
I've got him back now. Sorry. It does it all the time. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so it was 86 points all out for me after the Arsenal game, which was a bit of a disappointment because I kind of had visions of like a double clean sheet and Odegaard doing something, but he was absolutely terrible. So I made one transfer this week and it was finally to get rid of Mark Flecken. So we've obviously talked about Flecken at length. He's been dreadful for us. He makes some saves and stuff, but he doesn't keep clean sheets. And so there was a bit of doubt about his injury status going into this week as well, because he came off in the last game, I think, with a groin injury. So I decided to make the move to Alisson, and really there was plenty of kind of plus points here. It was basically because Liverpool are going to double around about 24-25, and I was kind of getting my ducks in a row for that. And I also kind of thought, well, it lets me double on a really good defence because Liverpool have been kind of strong defensively. So I thought I'll get on there. Now, if it brought me a negative, it locked me out of like a third attacking Liverpool asset. But I think what we could see even from the game week gone by, we've seen Diaz bench recently, we've seen Jota bench 2 in a row. They're a bit harder to predict, so maybe it's best to go for the defence. It also meant because I made this change, I had to go another week without Alexander Isak, which has obviously hurt me quite a bit. But I'll go through my team from back to front for the podcast, people. So I had Alisson Becker in nets, 6 points. Trent with a 15, so it was deflected strike. We took those, and then we had Timbers 1 and Gabriel's 2. Salah's obviously he's just the elite captaincy pick at the minute. He had the 32-pointer, and there was obviously a big swing between the Palmer folk, although not many people went for Palmer. Palmer blinked, they got the 2 points. Rodgers with a big score, goal and assist, and the 11-pointer. Yellow card, so he's got the 5-card yellow ban. So does Timber, so we've got a bit of trouble there. Semenyo with a very lucky, dodgy assist. I don't think it was an assist personally myself. Odegaard with a blank and 2. Up top, Cunha with a single point. He was taken off at half time with muscular tightness. He's got the ban. I don't know about you. The ban's ridiculous. He's basically going to miss one game in the Premier League. He's going to be banned in the FA Cup, and then he's going to be back. But the fixtures are bad. We're going to talk about that later. Then I had the man, the myth, the Pedro. 9 points. You boys have been running Pedro under the ground. And he came back. He came good with 2 assists and a bonus point. And I was the same as you. I benched Raul Jimenez. But no, I basically have 3 suspension flags and a wee bit of trouble on that front. But very happy with 86 points. And I think I'm up to 188k. So happy there.
I'm actually really happy that Raul got a return this week because it means he's most likely going to start against Ipswich, hopefully. And that's obviously the fixture we want him in as well, isn't it?
We will talk about this later in the pod, but his next 3 fixtures are really good, and I didn't mind. He's at a kind of price point where I don't mind buying him to bench him the odd week, and that's going to happen. And I think that's the hallmark of having a kind of good squad, and I'm fine with that. But as you say, it gives us a wee bit of confidence going into the next 3 that he will start. He might sub off around 65, 70, but the fixture's really good this week, so no, I'm pretty happy with 86.
Yeah. And speaking about a wee bit of confidence, Nacho, we got your team up on the screen here as well. I love the fact that all our teams are slightly different. Your team is very different to ours, but obviously you've got your points from different avenues, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's it. I don't copy other people, so obviously I'm a bit. No, that is a good thing, though, isn't it? In terms of, you mentioned Hibbo about you don't have Alexander Isak, but you still manage to pick up a green arrow. And that is a good thing about this year, where you can actually still get green arrows, even though it feels like you are missing out on somebody who is quote unquote essential in the game. So yeah, 86 points for the team. I had a big decision to make with Bruno Fernandes. So he was an obvious sell coming into game week 19 with the red card being suspended for this game. But I look at a lot of managers out there. There just weren't many that were really catching my attention. I was tempted by maybe Ismail Assar, Eze, but I just couldn't really bring myself to go there to justify what I would do with the additional cash. And with 0 money in the bank and only 1 free transfer, I always find it's a case of, if you've got no money in the bank, at least have a few transfers built up to be flexible. Have one or the other. I had neither. So I had to roll the transfer for a bit more of a long-term view. So coming out of a green arrow is just an added bonus. So just going through the team quickly. Sells with the 6-pointer. He's just basically been the hero each week for my team. And even though Fabianski's flagged, I'm just going to play Sells any fixture given now. I've seen enough from Forest to kind of justify them as a great defensive team. Back 4 in the end. Munoz brought him in a few weeks ago, so I'm not that devastated about the 2-pointer. And he put up like 1 XG, so he was good. Trent with a 15-pointer, Gabriel 2, Anderson with the 0. In midfield, obviously, I went early with Gordon, and I didn't have Isak previously, and I was kind of feeling like it was the wrong move. But it's probably the first transfer in a long time where I've been a couple of weeks ahead of the game, where I've actually picked up a few price rises. Not saying I'm an oracle or anything, but it's good to see actually that he's coming into people's teams, and I don't have to transfer him out. Palmer, Salah with the captaincy, Semenyo, and then obviously the boy that I've just been hyping up for many, many weeks, João Pedro, coming in clutch in my team. No, I cannot take any credit on João Pedro. He was this close to leaving. But João Pedro and Isak up top. So 86 points, 193k. I will take it this week.
Yeah. I mean, you make a really good point there about Gordon, because you got him in before pretty much everybody else did. And I remember you bringing him in going, don't know how it happened, ended up with Gordon.
Yeah.
But actually, you're now in that position where other people are trying to clamour to get him. And it's lovely, isn't it? Where you feel like you're just a little bit ahead of the curve with something like that.
Yeah, it literally feels like the first time since probably the first week I wildcarded, and that's it. So that's the only player really I'm kind of thankful for in the team.
Yeah. And Hibbo, on that same ilk, obviously you haven't got Isak. He has gone up by about almost 1 million in the last like month or so. Is there something there where, do you ever get governed by that? For instance, like I moved from Cunha to Isak 2 weeks ago because I was thinking, my God, Isak's going to be like 0.5 million more before I can get to him. And obviously the fixtures were there. They were okay, obviously. Is that kind of a worry to you sometimes? Or do you just think, no, I've got a plan, I'm going to get him when I want to get him kind of thing?
No, I think price is always a factor. Like, for me, I look back at the Isak thing and I like to play fairly conservatively, and I like to, where possible, use free transfers and not take hits. Now, I think with the benefit of hindsight here, I can look back and say, by not taking the -4, I've maybe cost myself about 40 points.
Yeah.
Do you know? So in one way, like, in my head, I think, no, well, it makes sense to play very conservatively and I don't want to take hits. I think this is a good example of where maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, I had to just make the move, if you know what I mean, and get Isak in, and I didn't do that. And I think I had a similar moment earlier in the season with Salah, where the Salah Cunha move was on, and I didn't want to take a hit, so I deferred it until the week after, and I didn't even do it properly then. So I think maybe that's a bit of a learning for me, to not be too rigid in my style and think sometimes, no, you know what? I'm going to have to make this transfer at some point down the line. Like, issues have cropped up for me, like say like the sack issue, and then you're kind of firefighting and trying to deal with the stuff that you have to deal with in any given week. And that's kind of pushed the Isak transfer back every week for me. And if I had just done it at the time, it would be done, if you know what I mean. So, no, I think I'm definitely very price conscious, but with this, I'm getting them on for Cunha this week. So that's kept out of the bag. That's what's happening. Yeah. So
I don't blame you. And Nacho, before we move off the teams, why is only one manager on the Scoutcast got Chris Wood? Chris Wood is absolutely unbelievable at the moment. Their little dink finish at the weekend. What's going on? What do you think? Why is he not owned by like 60% of managers?
I know. I feel like Chris Wood, we always speak about it with him probably over the last whole year, I would say, because he was fantastic, obviously, at the back end of last season. We all knew exactly what we're getting with Chris Wood. He's not the guy who's going to get hat tricks, apart from, I think, that one away against Newcastle. And it just always feels like there's that one forward that is kind of like the shiny toy that everybody wants to go to. So it was Cunha at one point, and Cunha did deliver for a lot of managers, and there's been others along the way. Obviously, Alexander Isak picking up a lot of managers' attention, but Chris Wood, on reflection over the course of the season at his price point, is probably one of the best value players, not only as a forward, but in the game. And I feel like it's going to continue to happen. I think probably similar to Hibbo right now, that people are going to be forced to go there if they own Cunha, because it just makes a lot of sense if you already own Alexander Isak. But when we actually break it down, penalty taker in a team that are chasing top 4 right now, guaranteed minutes, like, he ticks all the boxes. I think it's just a case of he is quite a boring pick when we compare it to some of the other flashier players that we do look at. But I think it's an oversight by a lot of us, and I think a lot of managers will be correcting that this week, for sure.
No, I agree. And let's just have one last look at my team. 100 points this week. Right, let's have a look at the XA for the last 6 game weeks. And top, we have not had this player top of any table for, well, I think ever. Jacob Murphy is top of the XA for the last 6 game weeks. Got 4 assists in the last 6 weeks. Enzo Fernandez in second. Mo Salah in third. I mean, Salah's just ridiculous what he's doing at the moment. But they're all the guys above XA, above 2XA for the last 6 game weeks. Then we got Gibbs White, Cole Palmer, and Mbumo, Alexander Arnold, Mateta, Morgan Rogers, Isak, Son, Rice, Cunha, Bruno Guimaraes, and Sarr, who rounds off the table there. Very interesting that Salah is actually top of assists in the last 6 game weeks with 5, Jacob Murphy with 4, and in terms of key passes, Cole Palmer and Alexander Isak are top with 18.
Wow.
Now, Hibbo, Jacob, we've just spoken about Gordon. We've spoken about Isak. They have the fixtures. They're playing incredibly well at the moment. Jacob Murphy is sat there, top of the XA over the last 6 game weeks, and he is returning, and he's playing in this team, and I don't think he's going to get dropped anytime soon. What is it that stops us moving to someone like him? Is it just because he hasn't got a flash name? He's not, young and hip and all that kind of stuff. What is it that's stopping us getting someone like Jacob Murphy?
I think it's probably for Murphy. It boils down to the minutes. Now, if you look, if we're to look back over this kind of period in time, he's obviously smashed it against Ipswich and he smashed it against Leicester. They were 2 4-0 games for Newcastle. And he's put up very strong underlines against Aston Villa. I think he had 1.19 XGA in that game alone against Aston Villa. And he only got an assist in that game. So the numbers are obviously fairly strong. But if we look back at, say, his last 6 set of minutes, he had 84, 77, 63, 63, and 59. And that's really the red flag with Murphy. 63, 63, 59. It's not really what we want. And okay, if you look at a set of fixtures that includes Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich, they're 3 of the very targetable teams from an offensive point of view at the minute. They're gone, and going forward, it's going to be the teams that he's going to play. And I think if you look at Isak, he's probably a lock in terms of Newcastle attack. If you're looking for the next best option, I think we would go Gordon.
Yeah.
But do you need to be tripling on the attack? Is probably the question. And is Murphy a better pick than, say, somebody like Rodgers? Now, I fully accept that Rodgers is suspended for this week. But I mean, long term, on that kind of price bracket of kind of low 5 or players that were low 5, I just kind of think somebody like Rodgers is clear, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers seems to be this player, though, that before he's obviously done very well in the last 2 weeks. But before that, you all of a sudden get these people saying, Rodgers isn't that good of a pick. He's not really up there for me in terms of budget picks. And someone like Ismail Assar all of a sudden came through and it was like, this is the pick people want to go with. Rodgers has just been so consistent all year, hasn't he? In terms of, he does seem to be able to get you those points more consistently for a longer period of time, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I think with players like Rodgers, and I think we've spoke about this from our very first Scoutcast episode of this season, it's I'm firmly of the belief that he's basically the 8th attacker in our teams. Do you know? Yeah. And I'm firmly of the belief that we should basically play squad FPL, where you should at least have 2 playing subs that are half decent. And I think Rodgers fits in that, in the fact that there are games where that you can bench him. And that is a bit of roulette because he does have the quality. And any game, I think managers got lucky this week that, say, for example, some of them had Bruno Fernandes. Had they play Rodgers this week? But if Bruno wasn't suspended, would they have benched Rodgers? Do you know? So there's always that bit of kind of roulette in terms of people potentially benching these points. But no, I think you kind of have to manage the expectations and say to yourself, we're talking about a guy that started the game at 5 million. He's potentially an 8th attacker. Do you need to be moving them pieces about? Because a few weeks back, people were doing, say, Rodgers to Ahmad or Enzo. Or,
yeah.
Is that going to get you your points? Or, should you be focusing your transfers and stuff that's higher impact? And I think that's where you should be going rather than kind of low impact 5 million to 5 million mids. It doesn't really appeal to me, that.
I mean, let's talk about high impact then, Nacho, because Cole Palmer, obviously, there was a little while ago where everybody was saying, you've got to have him. And obviously, we look this week and there's a few people out there that said, I'm going to captain Cole Palmer over Mo Salah at the moment. And, if you look at the stats based on the last 6 game weeks in XA, Cole Palmer isn't much behind Mo Salah. But he got a blank this week and people are starting to say, what's going on? I mean, is there something happening at the moment, do you think? Is it just... this is the difference between an elite player like Salah and someone that's maybe in a tier below with Palmer?
Yeah, possibly. I think with Palmer versus Salah, I think firstly it's an elite team in Liverpool versus Chelsea, and that's coming from a Chelsea fan. I think we're seeing right now that when it comes down to captaincy decisions, which has probably been the case for a lot of managers over the last few weeks, there is also the team factor that we need to take into account when we deem players quite close in terms of predicted points. And I think now at this point of the season, I think we're starting to understand the teams that we can kind of start to trust, like the Arsenal and Liverpool assets. Now, Arsenal don't have that player right now that we can kind of say to ourselves, he is going to be the points monster. But Liverpool, we can in Mo Salah. And previously it was that of Chelsea with Cole Palmer. And I still think Cole Palmer, by the way, is a fantastic option. Do not be selling him. The fixtures coming up: Palace, Bournemouth, Wolves, Man City, West Ham. I mean, great long-term fixtures for Chelsea. He'll play every minute on penalties. There's no doubt that he will get rotated at all. The only thing about it, of course, is just with Chelsea right now under Maresca, I do think that this sort of run could possibly continue. So up against Palace away, who defensively have been okay under Glasner, and then a Bournemouth team that are pressing like maniacs against Chelsea, who might have Barishile at the back or Disasi. Like, I think there is still going to be some tough times for Chelsea over the next few weeks, but end of the day, if Chelsea are going to turn the corner, he's going to be at the heart of it. So I wouldn't be panicking about Cole Palmer right now, but I think it really does make captaincy very easy for us over the next few weeks. And unfortunately, I think we're having what we saw of Haaland last season in Mo Salah now.
It seems, don't get me wrong, obviously it's great that we're seeing Salah doing what he's doing. It seems a shame, though, that we're having this off-season from Haaland, and now Salah becomes permanent in terms of captaincy. Like, it's so much better when you can pick and choose your captaincy. It feels just a bit more exciting, doesn't it? Whereas now it just feels very much like Salah is the captaincy moving forward. And Hibbo, he's obviously got Man United up next, so I don't see that changing anytime soon, does it?
No, I think we'll do the Matrix, I think, later on at some point. And I think captaincies... My thing with captaincy is once people kind of get this mindset that a certain player is a perma-captain, I don't really believe that. I think like every week you kind of have to analyse captaincy regardless, because there'll always be a spot where you can maybe take a certain player on. And I think recently we've had some success with Palmer. So like he does have that quality, he does have that potential. And like these things change in time. Like if we're looking, I think, and we'll look at it in the XGA table, like Mo's doing great, but he's got obviously huge statistical overperformance, you know, and that while he's running super hot at the minute, that'll eventually kind of come back down a wee bit more into something that looks a wee bit more normal. He's going to have a few weeks where he blinks. And I think it's always prudent to kind of do your research every week to see if, well, is this a week to take him on? Now, I don't think this is a week to take him on. Like, spoiler alert, I think very much Man United are there for the taking, given their form recently, especially in the last six and especially under Amorim. But no, I do think it's worthwhile to do it. But we have this perma-captaincy debate all the time, and then suddenly there's a bit of a sea change and things change a wee bit.
Yeah, and things change very, very quickly in FPL, don't they? I mean, if we have a look at the XGI table, so this is the XGI table over the last 6 game weeks again. Someone's just cracked open a can there, like it. I can guess which one. So we've got Mo Salah is at the top of the XGI table over the last 6 game weeks. 6.21 XGI over the last 6 game weeks, 11 scoring contributions, which would seem absolutely incredible if Alexander Isak wasn't just underneath him with 5.91 and 10 scoring contributions. Jacob Murphy is next with 4.38 and Cole Palmer 4.34. They're the only guys that are above 4. Then we've got Son, Mateta, Dango Utara, Vardy, Sarr, Bowen, Solanke, Fernandes, Enzo Fernandez, Haaland, Gibbs-White and Zoboszlai at the top there as well. I'm not going to talk about Salah too much now. Isak, we've already spoken about a little bit too. We've spoken about Cole Palmer as well. The big one that we've seen this week, obviously, is that Cunha is now suspended. Like you said, he's out for 2 games. It's not Premier League games in terms of it doesn't have to be just that. He's going to miss one of the League Cup games and one game where it's looked like he was going to be injured for anyway. Nacho, if you had Cunha, would you be getting rid of him? So you've got someone like Wood there who's performing very well. You've got other players at that price. If you haven't got an Isak, for instance, like Hibbo. But Cunha's playing incredibly well at the moment, and he is a bonus point magnet. Would you just hold for a week, or would you be selling straight away?
Yeah, Cunha's a really interesting one this week with the ban situation, because like you said, for those that don't know, it's a 2-game ban, but only one of those is in the Premier League. So we're back for game week 21. Now, there's a few things. I think Firstly, if you don't have Alexander Isak in your team already, I would just be using Cunha as your player to get to him and just be done with it, because
Listen up,
the fixture
Hibbo.
this
Listen
week
up.
is fantastic. Yeah, everyone just, you know, kind of like
Copying
making
again.
sure that you're, yeah.
Cheers, mate.
But I do think that that's just a very clear move, even for a -4. I think Cunha is fantastic, but when I look at the fixtures coming up for Wolves, even if you do take out game week 20, and we need to remember Cunha is a talisman in this team, putting up good numbers to an extent. Newcastle, Chelsea, Arsenal, Villa, Liverpool in the next few. I know Wolves have got a new manager. We're seeing a new manager bounce under him, but what can we honestly expect over this period? Now, I think right now we've touched on it. Someone like a Chris Wood is very boring to some managers, isn't the baller like we see of Cunha, but it's a very easy player to go to over that period. And I don't think you have to sell Cunha, but I think the fixtures are enough that you need to consider other options out there. If you have other problems in your team, then Cunha could stay there. That's the way I view it right now. If you have no other problems and you have the transfers available, Cunha out, then would probably be the move I would make.
Yeah, so along that same tangent then, Hibbo, is Cunha to Isak the easiest transfer you're going to make this year?
By far. It doesn't even need any consideration, I don't think. And I think looking at the XGA table, what I kind of found a wee bit stark when we were putting the stats together was like Salah and Isak are just clear. And then there's a gap really until the rest of the players, like Jacob Murphy's sitting around 4.38 for the non-paying XGA. But those boys are pushing kind of 6. And it's interesting to see Isak and that kind of elite player numbers. And when we look on down the table, Haaland's so far down, but no, like I totally agree with Nacho. And, the question is does Cunha have to be a sell? There's maybe an argument for some people that they could maybe carry on, but no, I think playing the fixtures, if we operate in the assumption, well, he's definitely out for Forest with a ban, he was probably going to be injured anyway, but then Newcastle, Chelsea, Arsenal, Villa and Liverpool is as hard as it gets fixture-wise. Moving off him in good form without an injury or without any kind of suspension would have obviously been a wee bit trickier, but I think it would have been the brave, right call. I think the Isak move for me is the easiest one in the book. But I think looking at the other players that you could potentially get, I think Wood's as solid as it gets. And I think earlier in the season, so much our thinking around for us was that I think Morgan Gibbs-White had penalties. That was the assumption. Now, that's not the case. That's new information that's come out as the season's progressed. And I do agree with Nacho, he is a kind of unfashionable type player. But what we're seeing is forwards that are unfashionable, but they're scoring a goal, they're getting 9-point returns. Like, that's what we're seeing with Cunha. Every time Cunha scores a goal, he was getting a 9-pointer. So I think, here's my question to you boys. Like, who's the best front three in the FPL at the moment? I think this is important to think about.
Well, I mean, Isak's obviously going to be in there, isn't he? And then you're probably looking at what? I still think Wood is fantastic because, like you just said there, when he scores, he gets the bonus. And I think Forest are just a really, really good team at the moment. So Isak and Wood definitely have to be in there for me. And then, I mean, I've got Raul Jimenez, but I don't think he's going to be in the top 3. Who would you put as the third one, Nacho, if you agree with the other two?
I do think Nicholas Jackson is still a really good option, but it comes down to budget, of course. Like, if you would have a front three of Isak, Jackson and Chris Wood, then you probably have to make a sacrifice somewhere unless you've been farming team value over the course of the season. And I think for those that are wondering about Nicholas Jackson, I think the experiment of Nkunku up front is just not working right now. We're not seeing the best of Chelsea when Nkunku is the number 9. So I do think Jackson's minutes are going to be pretty solid going forward in the Premier League. So I think that is probably my favourite front three. But I would say that strikers are starting to be less appealing in the game right now, which is quite interesting because at the start we were saying how we've got so many options available. Now it's starting to be a little bit interesting where people like Gabriel Jesus are coming onto the agenda, but I think we all have them scars of previous seasons where we just can't bring ourselves to go there.
Yeah, no, I do agree. A few people in the chat have mentioned Jackson. Some have mentioned Gakpo, which is interesting. Watkins, I worry about Watkins. He lost his place to Duran, didn't he? And I don't see why when Duran comes back, that's not going to happen again. So I do worry about Watkins a bit. I know it's because I've got him, but I don't hate the Raul pick. I think Fulham have really nice fixtures coming up. And I know Muniz is there, but he's on penalties. I think he's one to definitely look at. Mateta, I mean, I'm going to talk to you now, Nacho, about Crystal Palace because a lot of people want to move to Crystal Palace players. Ismaila Sarr is there in terms of do people move from a Rodgers to a Sarr? Eze's there. People keep forgetting about Eze. He scored obviously last week. We had that kind of warning though about people jumped on Palace very, very quickly because they had that Southampton fixture, and then shock horror. They're not an elite team, and they obviously didn't absolutely steamroll Southampton. Would you move to a Sarr or an Eze if you were a Rodgers owner, do you think? Or would you keep Rodgers? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Rodgers is an interesting one because, of course, game week 20 was one that you really wanted him in for that home game against Leicester. Now, I think with Rodgers, what I really do like about him is that it feels like a player where we've had 19 game weeks where I think you can happily bench him and feel okay about it. I don't think we've got to the stage right now with Rodgers where he has to be in the 4 of your midfield. I feel like he's, as Hibbo said, he is the 8th attacker. So with Everton away and Arsenal away in 21 and 22, if your squad is good enough to bench Rodgers over that period, I think he's great for them game week 23 onwards. However, if you're in a spot right now where you've been relying on Rodgers to be your go-to man each and every week and you need to sell, I do feel like Sarr Eze can be on the agenda now. I still think I want to see a bit more from Crystal Palace and Eze because I was an early mover on Eze at the start of the season, just didn't see what we saw last season. And I still feel the same about Eze. I think you can go there early doors and you can pick up some of the points, but I feel like game week 20 with Chelsea, I know Chelsea have had a bit of a stumbling block, but it just feels like a great opportunity just to reassess Crystal Palace once again and really see who is the one to go for. And I think with these opportunities, maybe just one more game week, because then after that, with Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, Man United, Everton, amazing long-term fixtures. I do feel like we will want to have a Crystal Palace attack over that period. And maybe just waiting one more game week to reassess is the move I would do.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I'm going to bring up the fixtures here. So this is the next 6 game weeks worth of fixtures, and this is ranked by difficulty. So we got Fulham that are up the top, Ipswich, West Ham, Leicester, Man United, Newcastle, Notts Forest are the next 6. Although some of these do need to change, I think, because like Nottingham Forest being a really easy fixture there might need to change. Southampton are in 2nd, Crystal Palace are 3rd, which is why we were talking about it there. Villa in 4th, which is why a lot of people are moving for Watkins. Everton, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Forest. And then right at the bottom, we've got Wolves. Maybe a bit more of an incentive as to why you might want to get rid of Cunha with his suspension and a slight injury. Man City are 2nd bottom. So if there was any reason to sell Haaland, that might be a bit more of one, although they do have West Ham at home this week. Ipswich, Bournemouth, West Ham, Leicester and Brentford are all towards the bottom. And Man United, who should probably be right down the bottom because it doesn't matter what the fixture is at the moment. Hibbo, I've just mentioned Crystal Palace there. They're 3rd on the form table. I've mentioned Eze. I've mentioned Sarr. They've got Mateta there as well. Have you got any kind of favourite Palace assets that you might want to try and look at?
No, well, I think most of the attention focuses on, I suppose, in defence, Munoz. Then in midfield, Sarr and Eze and Mateta. If I had to pick a favourite, I would say Eze, historically. Because he's always taking a lot of set pieces. He's not nailed on pens. There was once upon a time where he was the nailed on penalty taker, but I think at one stage this season, Mateta has taken a penalty ahead of him while they were both on the pitch. I'm not sure which game. But that obviously leaves a wee bit of a question mark. Like, is he on them? Is he not on them? We'll not know until the next one comes up. So that's slightly against his appeal. But I think, like, historically, everybody rushed because of the underlines this week for Sarr. And rightly so. But I think if I had to pick one, it would be Eze, just because of historically what we get from him as a player. I think he's the kind of player who, he does a lot in the game, so whenever he returns, he can hit that big score, he can hit that 9-pointer, 10-pointer, double digits. And no, I think what Callum said is like nail on the head. Watch him brief against Chelsea and then see, because the fixtures get really good after that. Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, Man United, Everton. That's really good stuff. And I think if people have the transfers and they have an issue in midfield, he'd probably be my pick, I think.
Yeah, no, I do like it. I was just going to ask you that, Cho. I was going to say about Fulham assets, and I was going to say they got Ipswich at home next. And I thought, do you know what? It's quite worth mentioning this, is Ipswich and Southampton the fixture to target as much as it was, say, 5-6 weeks ago? Because we seem to keep doing this, and actually they both seem a little bit more resilient than they were before. Southampton, we thought were going to get steamrolled by Palace. It didn't happen. Ipswich seemed to be doing quite well as well. Is it that things have changed a little bit and there's other teams to target, or is this just a little bit of a good spell, but you should still be targeting those teams?
Yeah, I don't think there's enough right now to suggest we should change our mindset and now not still target them. I think Ipswich, we've had 19 game weeks now, and we've still seen varying results. We've seen times where, like in game week 18 against Chelsea, game week 19 against Chelsea, where they put up a great performance, but on another day they concede a couple of goals. I think Ipswich themselves, I think we still can target. I think we've seen enough, especially away from home, unless you're a Spurs fan. In terms of Southampton, I think we will see a bit of a swing just because of how Russell Martin was managing that team. Felt very much like he was managing on his own accord in terms of maintaining his reputation and playing a certain way so that he can at least get another job off the back of the Southampton gig. With a new manager coming in, I think there's probably going to be more emphasis on just getting the results in the door. I can't sit here right now and say to you what I know about Southampton and this new manager, but I can only imagine they are going to be a little bit more difficult than that under Russell Martin. But still, I think they're both still championship teams, and I would still target them nonetheless. So, for example, Fulham with Ipswich at home, I wouldn't be looking at that thinking, oh, they beat Chelsea last week, they could be a bit trickier. Still think it's a brilliant fixture for teams.
Yeah. And Hibbo, I've already mentioned there about Watkins. Aston Villa obviously have Leicester at home, then they got Everton away. Do you see the clamour for Watkins? Do you see, obviously he did well at the weekend. He got a goal and assist, and so did Rodgers. Do you see that, or do you see it as a potential? I'm going to have to just transfer him out again in a couple of weeks. Like, what's your take on it?
I think it depends on your position in terms of transfers. Do you know, like people that kind of wildcarded fresh in 19 maybe had an idea in their head where I'm going to get Watkins. And they obviously done very good this week. He got 12 points. And maybe they went on the wildcard 19 with a stack of transfers and they thought, well, I'll take him for 3 games, then I'll move off him. That's a very different scenario to people that maybe have issues with their squad right now that they have to address. Like, you know, we're maybe covering players that are potentially going to be suspended for a couple of games, maybe a few injuries. That's different. I think for me, like I'm looking at it now going, do I want to jump on Watkins now? And in 2 game weeks time, he's maybe going to be an issue. Duran's going to come back. It wouldn't be for me. I don't really, I understand the clamour in a certain way because people are trying to replace a striker, but I do think as a transfer in, the transfer out within a couple of weeks, because Duran's going to come back and they play, and because his minutes have just been a wee bit overall shaky. But no, I think these teams, like just to touch on your previous point with Nacho, these teams for me are still very much the teams they target. Like Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton, I think are absolutely dire. And then there's teams that are kind of nearly there, you know, like Wolves, Everton and Palace, maybe they're kind of in the mix where there's loads of those teams that are in the mid-table that I still think that are worth attacking. And even now we're looking at good teams, or like historically good teams like Man United and Spurs, that are going through tough moments defensively, who I think can be got at. So I don't think anything's changed in that respect. I think we still very much target the promoted teams because I think they're kind of caught adrift. Brentford are terrible as well, by the way.
Yeah, they are. I mean, when we talk about targeting those teams then, Fulham, like I said, are top here in terms of difficulty for their next 6 fixtures. Nacho, a player that is in supreme form at the moment, and he's getting linked away. He's got so many assists in the last couple of weeks. Anthony Robinson. If you were, say, a Timber owner, I feel like we're targeting Hibbo quite a lot tonight. If you were a Timber owner, would you be jumping off that double Arsenal defence and maybe trying to get an Anthony Robinson if you don't have him already? Because if they can get a few clean sheets, with his attacking output, he seems like he could be an absolutely amazing asset, doesn't he?
Yes, I do like Robinson as a pick, and I think he's fantastic. He's now 5 million. That's my only concern right now is it feels like he's now dipped into that next bracket of defender, whereas before he's 4.5, 4.6. Of course, if you're coming down from someone like a Timber, then it isn't a concern. But when you do have also options available, like a Timothy Castagne, what if I said the first name? Castagne at Fulham, at right back, who is now going to be, 0.7 million cheaper than Robinson. I know Robinson's putting up good numbers, but I'm just looking over the last few weeks, like 0.22 XA, 0.14, 0.11. I'm not looking at these thinking, oh my God, this guy is just like absolutely killing it every week to that where I need to justify the additional. If you can afford it, absolutely. But on the point of selling your Timber, if you're in a position right now where you can just bench him this week, I still would do so. I know Arsenal conceded in game week 19 and it was really frustrating, but their underlying numbers have just been ridiculous defensively, and they still done it again in today's fixture. So I still think the Arsenal double defence is one that you should try and keep long term, especially with basically no attacker that we really want to go to anymore. That double Arsenal defence, I think, is going to pay off over this New Year period.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that Arsenal defence. So it's a tough one. I'm going to go to you next, Hibbo, because I know you've got the double Arsenal defence. When I'm looking at it, like Nacho's just said, I think it was 0.33 XGC they put up today, which is great, absolutely brilliant. But obviously they conceded. I'm looking at the fixture. They got Spurs at home, Villa at home, Wolves away. It's not too bad, but it does kind of block, those players like Anthony Robinson, Lewis Hall, who's doing very well at the moment as well. Those other kind of high upside players. Is there a want from you to maybe change away from that, or are you just thinking, no, they are arguably the best defence in the league. I want 2 defenders from their team?
I think the latter.
Yeah.
Their stats are incredible, and I think, specifically with Tumber, like I bought Tumber with the Ben White injury in mind, and I was doing a bit of research on this over Christmas, and it still seems as if there's no really kind of timeline on Ben White. So there could be an extra kind of maybe 6, 7, 8 weeks just in Tumber yet. So I think because of that, I'd be more than happy to just take the suspension on the chin, bring somebody else, maybe like Mikalenko off my bench. Spoiler alert for the boss team. But I wouldn't use a transfer at this point in time to replace Tumber. And if I was to kind of look at, say, Lewis Hall or somebody like Robinson or Castagna, I'd be more likely to change Greaves, if you know what I mean, and spend a wee bit of extra money and say, right, I'm going to lift him up now. But no, I think at this moment in time, Arsenal just look like a super elite defence. Their numbers are really strong. The immediate fixtures, like if we're looking at Brighton, Spurs, they're not the easiest games from like a defensive point of view because those teams can attack. Aston Villa maybe the same, but then Wolves and Leicester not too far away. They do have Man City. So there's maybe an argument that you could say in this next 6-week period, how many clean sheets are they going to get? Maybe 2. But like we said this at the start of the season, and they ended up keeping 3. There was this great big debate about, do we fade Arsenal at the start of the season? And I think they kept 3 clean sheets in 6 weeks. And I wouldn't put it past them to do the same again here. So no, for me, I'm going to hold tight and I'm going to just keep Tumber, I think, for the time being.
But you look at that run for Newcastle, Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away, Fulham at home. If you can get to Lewis Hall, if you had to say now, who would you want, Lewis Hall or Timber? Be Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall's been incredible moving forward, hasn't he? Like the positions he's getting himself in. And I look at that and think, I think I'd want Hall if I didn't have him already.
Hall has been a very kind of like an under the radar pick, although some people, I look at their teams and they have 3 Newcastle players. They've got Hall, they've got Gordon, and they've got Isak. And like I obviously don't have any piece of that at the minute, which shows you maybe my kind of stance on Newcastle at the minute. But no, I do agree though that block of 4 fixtures, especially after Spurs away, is really, really good. And I think from an attacking sense, Hall's been hugely involved. His price is really cheap. But I don't know if I want to do it for Tumber quite yet, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I'm kind of happy to keep the clean sheet, to keep the double up in defence. I've nearly kind of got a thing now where I've got 2 double ups. I've got like double Arsenal, double Liverpool. And if I was going down the route of bringing Hall in, it would be kind of to supplement those. But then it's nearly going to give me a bench headache every week because Greaves is like my 3rd, he's like my 15th man, if you know what I mean. And once I spend, say, like 0.7 or 0.8 or $1 million and lifting him up, then I've got an issue where, right, who am I benching now out of my defence? And like, am I going to start benching Tumber? Possible. I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's an interesting one. And I just think it's amazing how FPL flips. Like Nacho mentioned it earlier about how we thought we had so many strikers. Now all of a sudden they've dried up, and all of a sudden it's all these cheap defenders everybody's trying to go to, like Anthony Robinson. We just mentioned Hall there, and obviously we've got Munoz and Tyreek Mitchell, all those players that we want to try and invest in as well. And it's funny how it changes. And obviously there's still Trent. Trent is obviously still there. He could haul against Manchester United this weekend, and I've got the captaincy matrix here, which is from Lego Marnie from Blue Sky. Thank you very much again. So he's got the captaincy matrix here. And when we're looking at game week 20, we got Haaland against West Ham. We got Saka. Obviously, it's not going to be Saka. It's going to be another Arsenal player against Brighton. Salah, who's got Manchester United at home. Watkins, who's got Leicester at home. Son, who's got Newcastle at home. Palmer, Crystal Palace away. Isak, Spurs away. And then Bruno, Liverpool away. Obviously, I don't think you go in there. But when we're looking at the actual matrix here, I think the Isak fixture against Spurs away is better than it looks here. So I think he is definitely in the mix there. You've got Salah, who's not even highlighted there against Man United at home. I think that's obviously in the mix there. When we're looking there, Nacho, straight away, what are you thinking? I wonder.
Well, I said this last week about Erling Haaland, about anybody that owned him, and you're paying that much money. We saw West Ham done against Liverpool, atrocious. So if there are the few people out there of Erling Haaland, I would be considering that. I just want to put it out there. But we know it's not highlighted on this list, but come on. As Hibbo would say, come on. Salah at home against Man United. They're not going to have the combination of Casemiro and Eriksen in midfield. It is worth noting. But I have just seen nothing right now to suggest that Man United are going to put up any sort of battle against Liverpool in this game. And it just feels like the form that Salah's in. Every week we have to ask ourselves, is there a good reason not to go with Mo Salah? And this week in particular, I just don't think there is any player, barring Erling Haaland potentially, that we can go outside of Mo Salah. I think in the coming weeks, actually, there are going to be some opportunities to go against him at times. But for this week, I think it's clear. I think Mo Salah is still the man to go for. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, Hibbo, are you going to be that man that says, nah, go against Salah this week?
Definitely not.
No. We've got a reputation, boys.
We've got a reputation, and in the last couple of weeks, we've been doing kind of like a top three, or I've been kind of doing a top three. And I think Salah's top, like Man United have been dreadful. Like Liverpool are absolutely flying. And I think Amarin's having a bit of a baptism of fire. Like, in the last 6 league games, I think United have lost 5. And the only one that they won was against Man City. It was a 2-1-1, which is kind of papered over the cracks. And it was nearly 2 bad teams going badly at that point in time. Second, I would have it Haaland, I think. So, again, I watched the Man City game against Leicester, and I think it was like nervous relief from Man City. It wasn't the usual kind of steamroller performance. So, as a team, they're definitely not in top gear. And for me, that affects the overall appeal of Haaland, I think, as an option right now. That are they going to go out and smash somebody 5-0? They were kind of happy enough they just won by a few, if you know what I mean. So that dulls down any kind of preference I would have, I think, for Haaland. And then if we look at, say, Watkins in third place, I think if people have him, he could be a good pick. We obviously know the minutes are guaranteed with Duran out. What I will say is no Rodgers might hurt him a bit. And it might hurt the attacking dynamic at Aston Villa, because who's going to come on to take that number 10 position? There's no way that they're going to be as good as Rodgers. But no, Watkins has the pains. And I think the thing with Watkins is, if he was totally nailed the way he had been in seasons gone by, with the addition of the pains, he would be locked in all our fantasy teams.
Yeah, I know.
And it's kind of strange that now, coming on the fixture against Leicester at home, you would have him at third pick. But I think it just says where we are with Haaland in terms of how we fancy him and where we are with Salah, because Salah's just my justification in my captaincy article for Scout last week for Salah was basically, it's Salah.
Yeah.
It's it is ridiculous. The underlying numbers were obviously through the roof, but when you were comparing two players that were nearly like a coin flip, I think you just had to look at the output and go, come on. This is just ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Salah's on course to absolutely smash the 303-point record at the minute. I think he's gone past 200, so it's hard to oppose him. And I think Old Trafford's leaking, and so's the Man United defence. So get on, Salah.
I genuinely, as a Manchester United fan, I dread to think what he's going to do against us. He could have 16 points by half time. And they've done it to us before, where they've absolutely demolished it. We don't know what to do against him. We genuinely don't. We are horrendous against Liverpool at the moment. City, I always back us against City because we tend to always get results against them. But it's just Salah, it's going to be absolutely... If you go against Salah this week, you're a very, very brave man. Genuinely, I think he is so far ahead of the captaincy for me, ahead of anybody. Genuinely worry. We'll see what happens, obviously, but I think Salah is definitely up there for me. Right, let's have a look at some bus teams then. So I have got Alisson in goal against Manchester United, obviously. I got Gabriel, Trent and Dean Howson who's at the back against Everton at home. I've got Salah as my captain, Palmer, Odegaard, and Semenyo. Could be Semenyo's last game for me. And then I've got Isak, Wood, and Raul Jimenez up top with Lewis, Hall, Lewis and Hall. And Rodgers on the bench. Rodgers obviously suspended. Actually helped me having Rodgers suspended because I had a bit of a benching dilemma as to whether to play Semenyo or Rodgers. And I was probably going to play Rodgers if I'm honest. So Semenyo comes in. I'm most likely going to roll this week. I quite like having Lewis just sat there on my bench against West Ham at home. I can't really play him again instead of anybody else there, I don't think. I quite fancy Howson against Everton at home. I think that's a good fixture for him. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I think I'm going to roll this week and then, as Nacho's already said, watch Crystal Palace this week against Chelsea and then maybe jump on an Eze for Semenyo the week after. I think that might be quite a nice little move that I can do. And Semenyo, the fixtures definitely dry up after this week for Bournemouth. So I think that would be a good time to move. So that's how it's looking at the moment. Anything to comment, boys?
I was just going to say, I think probably quite a popular thing right now is Odegaard. I think you've both got him.
Yeah,
we've got Odegaard right now. Yeah. So, what's your general thoughts on him right now? Is he just going to be a player that sits there for a little bit longer and maintains his price point structure in the team, or?
Yeah, he's not a problem in terms of he's playing and he's getting the minutes, and obviously Arsenal are scoring goals. But he is a problem in terms of his positioning and his output and all that kind of stuff at the moment. I was so close between him and Martinelli, but I just genuinely wanted that safe pick because over this period, I wanted the person that got the minutes. So obviously that's why I went Odegaard. He could still obviously have the bit of a share of the penalties as well. He's not somebody that I'm definitely moving out at the moment, but he could be a bit of an issue in a couple of weeks that I look to move on. How are you feeling, Hibbo?
Similar, I think whenever I bought Odegaard, I felt like I was buying from a fairly thin pool of players. Like I was kind of Odegaard, Bruno, and Son, and all have been dreadful. One got a red card, now he's got Liverpool, and Son missed a penalty, and Odegaard's been absolutely trash. But he still has a good fixture this week, and I still think he has another couple of good fixtures. And because I think we have other issues in the team, they have to be addressed first. So he's not exactly a top priority move for me. No, definitely not. But I think in time, we'll be maybe looking at, does he maybe become Bruno? Because Bruno's fixtures get good then. Or does he become Mbeumo? That could be a decision.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think he's somebody I'm going to move. Well, definitely not this week. But obviously with 2 free transfers next week, maybe I'll look to move him out then with Semenyo. But the thing I definitely don't want to do is I don't want to move off that price point. I want that kind of that price point to stay there, if that makes sense. And I'm quite happy to have Semenyo and Rodgers as those cheaper mids, but we'll see what happens. Hibbo, let's move on to your team. Obviously, you're going to wait to see what I do before you move, or are you just going to do Cunha to Isak and get closer to my team?
That's a no-brainer this week. So I have 1 free transfer and 3.3 million in the bank, so it's easy peasy. It's Cunha to Isak because I must be the only person in FPL that doesn't know him, but I have a few fires. 3 players suspended, so obviously Tumber, Rodgers, and Cunha. And I hate to be that person, but this is why we play modern FPL with a squad. In the days gone by, everybody piled their money under their kind of starting 11, and they had 4 million defenders on the bench and stuff like that. We don't play it this way, and there's a reason for that. And this is the dark days now. You can kind of roll with the punches. So just from back to front for the podcast people, I've got Alisson and Trent at home to Man United. Great fixture. I've got Tumber on the picture, but I sent you this prior to him getting suspended.
You did.
So Mikalenko's going to play away to Bournemouth, and I've got Gabriel away to Brighton. Then in midfield, I've obviously got Salah, team captain, Semenyo at home to Everton, Palmer's at Palace, and Odegaard's at Brighton. And then up top, it'll be Isak, Raul Jimenez, and João Pedro. So it's kind of unfortunate that I have to play João Pedro because I was definitely benching him until Rodgers got his ban, because this was a great fixture for Rodgers. Yeah. But overall, I'm in pretty good shape, I think. I don't feel too bad about it. And now we're really looking at the next strategic targets, I think. Liverpool, Everton are going to double. People are saying it's going to be around 24, 25. That's going to be a big thing. Blank Gaming 29 is going to be a big thing. Assistant manager chip, what we're going to do with our bench boost and free hit, how we're going to play that latter half of the season is all going to be in consideration. So I kind of think at the minute my team doesn't feel too bad because I've got 3 Liverpool plus Mikalenko.
Yeah.
So for the double, I already technically have like 4 in place. So looking at other people's teams, they're maybe going to start scrambling to get Liverpool and Everton players, and maybe that'll give me an opportunity over the next few weeks to finally get saving again.
Yeah. How do you feel spending 1.5 million more on Isak than everybody else from 2 weeks ago?
It's crazy though, his price.
The price is over Christmas. The price rises are mental. I must have gone up about over 1 million at least from like the price rises, not just from Isak, from like everybody. Like it's been crazy over Christmas, hasn't it?
Mad.
It has, but see, in a way, like I completely take your point. And like the amount of extra that I'll pay for Isak obviously hurts what I can do in terms of my budget and what I can do in terms of my expected points from my team. But just to take you to a different point in price, I kind of switch off a bit from price changes. Like there's loads of people that kind of watch. There's loads of people that are watching like live FPL's price predictor and saying, "Oh, this player's going up and down tonight." And this, I don't bother. I just kind of switch off altogether, unless I'm the week itself. I'm thinking, right, I'm buying this player and I'm more than likely selling this player. So what's happening with them price wise? Then I check. But like apart from that, I think you become a better FPL player by switching off from price changes.
You were messaging me New Year's Eve complaining about what you had to pay for Isak, saying, "I got mouths to feed at home. I got mouths to feed at home. How am I going to cost?" I was like, "Oh my God, get a life, Hibbo. Jeez, just buy the man." Right, Nacho, let's have a look at your team. You do have Isak. Oh, I've got your points up again for some reason, mate. Sorry. I don't know why I don't have your best team. I'll try and change it now, but talk us through it while I sort it out.
Okay, yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, so I've got 2 free transfers, all 0 done. In the bank. Oh, yeah. All good?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so I've got 2 free transfers, 0 in the bank. And I mentioned I wanted to roll my transfer into this week to give myself a bit of flexibility. So I always, whenever I look at my team, think to myself, is there any actual big problems in the side? So just read out the team quickly. I've got Sells away against Wolves, fine. Trent, Gabriel, and Anderson at the back. Again, happy with that 3. Midfield 5 right now is Semenyo, Salah with the captaincy, Palmer, Gordon, and Bruno Fernandes away against Liverpool. And then we've got Vissa away against Southampton and Isak. And when I got a bench right now of João Pedro and Munoz as well, I feel pretty happy with the team. So I was rolling my transfer for game week 20 to give myself a bit of flexibility to make some moves. But when I'm looking at the fixtures in isolation for this week, I don't actually think there are any ones that I really want to get to. We've discussed how Crystal Palace, I'm more than happy just to let that one be and then decide in game week 21 who to go for as possibly a Semenyo replacement. So I feel really actually happy about rolling it again and having myself 3 free transfers for game week 21. The big decision for me is, do I play Bruno Fernandes or do I play João Pedro in my team? That's the big call. So yeah, unless I miss anything, from your guys' perspective, I think it's a roll transfer.
I think that Bruno or Pedro is actually quite a tough decision. I think I'd be favouring Pedro personally.
Yeah,
I think I would. I think that home fixture against Arsenal, it's just obviously that Arsenal are a really good defence, but I think I probably would. I don't know what Hibbo thinks.
I think that's quite a tough decision, that. I think I would go Pedro personally myself, but I don't really like the thought of benching Bruno. Yeah. I never like the thought of benching any player that's in pens, mostly, but I suppose Pedro is too.
He is.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It'll be the classic thing. There'll be a big swing. Realistically, it should be João Pedro starting because it is at Anfield, isn't it? But it's one of those, really. So yeah, I'll be in for pain regardless, whatever happens. I'm sure of it.
Nice,
but I do like the idea of 3 free transfers because I just think building those transfers now while you can is a good position to be in.
Yeah.
Big time.
I think I'm predicting it. I think we're going to have 3 green arrows again next week. And I tell you what, Nacho, I think Wiss is going to be your main man this week. I think he's going to be the one that nobody else owns.
It could be the one.
He could be indeed. Although obviously it's an away fixture, but against Southampton, you never know. So we got a bit of a Q&A now. So we finished that. It's perfectly on an hour. So we've got about 5 minutes to answer as many questions as possible. We've got over 500 people in the chat. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it. There's one person that said, has Andy got his new laptop? I had my new laptop for a little while now, but it does seem to be slowly sorting itself out, and it seems to have run absolutely beautifully tonight. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Thank you. So chuck us in some questions and we'll answer as many as possible. I'll chuck them to the boys. They're pretty good at answering them. Michael Scott, love your sitcom, says, I went Martinelli, Jesus on wildcard. On wildcard 18, would you use 1 or 2 free transfers to cash one in this week with either Martinelli to Gordon or Jesus to Wood? What would you do, Hibbo? Would you get rid of one of those Arsenal assets to get in Wood or Gordon?
No, I would keep both.
Yeah, I think I would as well. Zubin says, do I keep Delap or do I sell him for Wood or Jackson? Well done on Delap, by the way, because he's played quite well recently. What do you think, Nacho?
Yeah, so I'm just getting the fixtures up for Delap, and I can see Fulham away, City, Liverpool, and Villa away over that period. The only problem with it, the players that you're mentioning really do change the structure of a team a little bit. So I think that's just a big thing you need to consider. If you're going to be upgrading Delap to Jackson, then what is that going to do for the structure of your team going forward? So I actually like Delap long term. My priority would be obviously Isak and then Wood over Jackson right now, just because of value.
Yeah. That's Hibbo. Hibbo's chatting in the chat as well. Nemanja says, who's the best Cunha replacement? I already have Isak. What do you think, Hibbo?
Wood.
No, fair.
Keep yourself Wood.
Yeah. FPL Bamboozle says, do I bench Munoz or Pedro this week? What do you reckon, Nacho?
I probably would bench Munoz. Yeah, I think Chelsea is still good for a goal. And I think Jai Pedro, even if he's having a terrible game, all it takes the penalty.
Yeah. Zem says, question, Jackson is the second most sold player. Is this a mistake given the Chelsea fixtures long term, Hibbo?
I think people are just maybe a wee bit shiny new toy syndrome. Like they're seeing strikers popping off like Wood, and they're maybe looking at Jackson and thinking, is there a wee bit of a question mark about the minutes? Obviously, his fixtures are still there, but I don't think he's a hard sell in any way, shape, or form. But I think that's what's driving the transfers.
SMB says, with double game week and Assman chip, is it time to start stockpiling free transfers, Nacho?
I love that it's called the Assman chip.
Oh, it is.
It's so good. So yes, in an ideal world, but I think also not at the detriment of your team. So I still think there are good fixtures that you can target. So I don't think it's a case of at all costs stockpile transfers, regardless of the chip. It's always been a case over this season. If you can royal transfer, it is always beneficial for flexibility going forward. But first thing is, do you have problems with your team? If the answer is yes, don't worry about stockpiling. Get your team addressed now and then reassess later. But of course, in an ideal world, yes, you would roll the transfer.
Yeah. Treble says, how much do you expect the transfer window to change things this year, Hibbo?
It's impossible to know. Like, I kind of think in years gone by, we've kind of had a bit of a dull winter kind of transfer window.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, so not unless some players get a bit of a loan move and suddenly they become more viable where they weren't really an option at all. But I think touching on Nacho's point about banking transfers, like if we can be a wee bit kind of conservative over the coming weeks, obviously make the transfers that you have to make, but if you have a wee bit of flexibility built into your team, then you should be able to address anything nice that pops up through the window, if you know what I mean.
I mean, never know. United could get an Osimhen or a Gyökeres, and then that's just another premium striker we have to ignore, isn't it?
Gyökeres actually went and quote to say if he wanted to play in the Championship, he could have stayed at Coventry.
Oh God. Oh. Moving on. I thought that was going to be an actual comment as well. Yeah, exactly. God, I was like, oh, did he say something? God damn it. That was a good one I had here as well. I can't see what it was. Marco Del Wazio says there doesn't seem to be much love for Mateta. Is he a good differential, Nacho?
I think he is a good differential because the fixtures aren't too bad, but I'm just not seeing enough right now. I'd much rather just get the midfielder or Munoz right now if I had to invest in game week 20, just because there's someone like Chris Wood who's at a cheaper price, sat in one of the teams who are chasing top 4 right now. That is the only reason why I think Mateta isn't getting a lot of love.
Yeah. And last one, Jimmy Chen says, do I do Cunha to Watkins or Jesus, Hibbo?
Oh, I'll be brave and say Watkins.
Yeah. but I'm not happy, by the way. People in the chat love the fact you've just absolutely reeled me in with that question. So well done, mate. Well done. I hope you're proud of yourself, all right? Right. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you so much for the 500 odd people that have been listening tonight as well. We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much if you are listening afterwards. And thank you so much if you're listening on the pod as well. Nacho, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Obviously, the first one for 2025. Hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, loved it as always. I can't think of any better way to start the new year than with you guys.
Exactly. Hibbo, thank you so much for joining us as well. Happy New Year. First one in 2025. Did you enjoy yourself?
It's always a pleasure, mate. And I just want to end the show by saying Happy New Year to everybody in the chat. Happy New Year to everybody listening. And congratulations on your 100 points.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, I wasn't going to mention it, but the people at Scout said, no, you've got to make sure you mention it. So I've tried to plug it a couple of times, but yeah, it'll be the last time it happens this year, I would have thought. This will be the highest I get this year, most probably. Thank you so much. We will see you all again next week. We wish you green arrows for the weekend, and we hope that your first full game week in 2025 is something that brings you what you want to happen. So thank you so much, and we'll see you all again next week. Bye-bye.